Everybody else set? Thank you for turning on the air conditioning. It was humidoric. Everybody else set? Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Bristol Town Council meeting of June 1st. And we started our meeting at 6:30 today with some special interviews, but I'd ask that you all, all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. We like to move and shake with the times. Tara Thibodeau, school committee member, and I had multiple conversations about recognizing excellence in our school system. And I don't know if the camera can go behind us here, but you'll be coming in front of us in a moment, had asked for recognizing, as I said, excellence. And Tara's first response was the 2021 wrestling state champions that are behind us here, and we're going to introduce them all in a moment. But if I could ask their coach, Eric Francis, to come up and introduce the team. And before you do that, Coach Francis, can I ask this council to add an agenda item for discussion purposes only?
So move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The floor is yours, sir.
All right.
And I'm sorry, and
just-
Eric had no idea he was going to say a thing here tonight, so the floor is yours, guys.
Been coaching for 30 years. I usually can find something to say, so I'll do my best. I always called that season the season that almost wasn't. I mean, we ended up having a wrestling season during the spring, which is unheard of, and that's usually when we're doing freestyle and Greco tournaments. But somehow we found a way in the state of Rhode Island to have a full season. It was a rare season. It was strange the way the tournaments went, the way all the meets went, but somehow our boys persevered and came through. They pulled it together. They all followed protocol. They all did what they could to keep themselves healthy and ready for the season. And we pushed through it all, and we went through it. We're getting to the end of the tournament and coaching at both Bristol and Mount Hope and Warren High School at one point in my life. It was one of those things where we've come in second and third quite a few times, and just wanted to let the guys know that we were going to do it what we used to call the Coventry way. It wasn't about how many champions you had. It was about how many kids rose to the occasion. And all those boys went through. One of them dislocated a shoulder, popped it back in. The trainer said it was okay, and he continued to wrestle and pin the guy he was losing to. So that was the type of season we had. Everybody rose to the moment, and that's why we're the 2021 wrestling state champions. These boys should all be proud. Boys, you want to head up this way?
Coach, could you introduce each one? And gentlemen, if you could come right up here. And if you could turn around so the public can see you.
James Thibodeau, Carson Correa, Elijah Bland. Well, just keep going, guys. There's too many. Just get up there. This isn't the full team, but it's enough of them. And right now I'm at the middle school, and I wish there was a way that I could coach both teams, because I would be the happiest person in the world if I could coach both my son in middle school and the remainder of the guys that we have left over from this team. It would be a great pleasure, but unfortunately the interscholastic league doesn't allow that. But congratulations, guys, on an unprecedented season. Neither Warren or Bristol has ever had a state championship as a team. Somehow you guys figured out a way to get it done. I'm proud of you. And it's something that you guys will have your kids someday walk into the high school and see that trophy, and you'll be able to talk about it. Congratulations, guys.
Round of applause.
aisles.
I think they're itching to leave.
I
They don't,
can
they don't
tell.
like the spotlight.
All right.
It's not on a wrestling podium with the medal. So
Gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Excellent job. Good job,
thank
you
you guys.
guys.
Thank you for sharing. Seriously, thank you for sharing the excellence. And also, Tara, and to the whole school and to the committee, this council looks forward to recognizing more excellence like this, whether it's scholastic or it's sports. It's outstanding achievement to all of you. And once again, nice job. Thank you, everyone. Madam Clerk.
Mr. Chairman and members of the council, the first item of business is the consent agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda?
Second.
Motion made by Tim, seconded by Tony to approve. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
The next item of business is the submission of minutes. We have the town council special meeting March 21st, the town council meeting May 11th, and the executive session meeting minutes from May 11th.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion made by Tim, seconded by Tony to approve. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman and members of the council, the next item of business is C1. This is ordinance 2022-5, chapter 25 for streets, sidewalks, and other public places. And this is second reading for adoption. And this is the seasonal outdoor seating for State Street.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Is the petitioners here? It was, yes, there. I'm sorry, I didn't look up far enough. So, gentlemen, if you would. Could you both again state your name and address for the records, please?
Yes, Zach Rivers.
And Brian Travers, Hope Street.
Thank you. So if you don't mind, if you could just reiterate the reason for the request. We have it in front of us, but I'd like it as much for us as for the public, if you would.
So what we're doing tonight. and
Zach lost his voice. so-
Yes,
Okay.
well, he'll be back, don't worry. No, we're very excited. So this is just, what I want to do is just read some excerpts from the minutes of October 2020. So 20 months ago, we brought this to you guys because this is just, we have some passionate, feelings about this. Council Chairman Caloro noted that the outdoor dining arrangements made during the COVID-19 pandemic have become popular. Council Chairman Caloro stated that he believes that the council's commitment to businesses is not going away and commended Mr. Rivers for asking for the continuation of the accommodation early. Councilman Texera agreed that it is advisable to deliberate this matter early and that he plans to support a suitable plan. Councilman Sweeney agreed with Councilman Texera. Councilwoman Perella favors the idea and noted that this was a bright spot. Councilman Lay asked to know the next steps with town solicitor Ursillo. Ursillo's comment was he plans to begin working on this immediately. So this was voted unanimously to refer the matter to the town solicitor. So this, for the past 20 months, has been a plan to try and recreate what was done during the COVID months, where we had outside seating on Lower State Street. I come from a point that I own the Bradford Diamond Norris bed and breakfast, which is on the corner of Hope and State. I wish I could report what my guests felt, the 2020 guests felt, but I didn't have any. But the 2021 guests that I had, we had about 400 reservations, over 1,000 people from 30 different states. Every single one of them, it was unanimous. They looked across the street, they walked down there. They said that outside, moving the tables to those few parking spots just created an experience that their towns are doing. That's what they look for when they go travel. So the purpose of putting this together was mainly to enhance that experience for not only the residents, but any guests that come, any tourists that do come into Bristol. We want to do it for the businesses because more foot traffic you can get down there, the better it is for businesses, whether they be retail, restaurant, the storefront for realtors, anybody that's down there, foot traffic is critical. I talked to Linden Place yesterday. They're like, we just want more foot traffic. And we said, well, tomorrow night's a big night. We're going to get this vote. And what it does, it just brings more people down there. And we all know, right? A rising tide lifts all boats. So having an experience where more people want to come down to the downtown is just great for everybody. So that's the nutshell. And what we put together was the plan that was proven, the plan that worked. So all we really wanted to do, no more, no less, we always want more, but we didn't put it in the plan, was just to recreate what was there, fine tune a little bit. And I think that was the hard work that you guys all did over this 20 months to get it to a point where we could approve it tonight.
Thank you. Questions so far? No, this is not a public hearing. Typically what happens in a public hearing is that I would open it up for both positive and negative, but it is this council's intention to listen, obviously, as we always do, to the public. So if there is, thank you, that was spot on and
Thank you, guys.
nice synopsis. So this council received both positive endorsements and also I wouldn't call them negative. I would call them not necessarily supporting it, but certainly supporting the businesses. And I must tell you, through the conversations that I've had with both property owners on State Street and the surrounding area, that is the reoccurring theme every single time, is that if they are in support of it, then it's obvious. If they're not supportive of it, they really quickly come to the point that they say, I think they're doing a wonderful job with the businesses down there. I know probably all of us have been to, if not all of the establishments, most of the establishments multiple times. I can tell you what kind of beer you serve at your facility there, maybe a few choices there. So you do an outstanding job. So what I would ask is if there are people that would like to speak in favor or against, if it gets, I can put a 2-minute timer on it, or I can ask you just to be very brief. I would ask that you just be very brief. So if there is someone that, or multiple people that would like to share their thoughts, please come up. And again, please be brief. You are welcome to come up. If you could please state your name and address for the record.
Hi, I'm Jane Masano, and I own a building with my husband down on Lower State Street, right next to Judge Roy Bean. I have pros and cons. I am always for the businesses, downtown, and for commerce. And I love seeing people walking around downtown. I mean, what's better than walking out on State Street and seeing our gorgeous harbor? I am concerned about how it does impact other businesses that are not retail. My building is not retail. I have offices in my building, and I have 2 therapists in my building on the upper floor. I have 4 fronts on State Street and then one around the corner on Thames Street. They all depend on clients coming to State Street and being able to park. The 2 therapists I have upstairs have elderly patients and clients who have a hard time walking and do like to park in front of the building. So that is an issue. I think we have a parking issue in Bristol, period. So that's something that later on I think needs to be addressed. As I said, I'm not against it. I'm really not. And I think these guys did a great job during COVID, and it was nice to finally see life again outside and on State Street. I was concerned about the trash that it all caused, and coming downtown almost every day, having to pick up in front of my building. I'm sure that will be addressed this year, and we've talked about that. Also, the length of time. 6 months is a long time to impact other businesses on State Street. This obviously benefits the 4 restaurants that are going to be participating. And I'm glad they have a way to make extra money by moving outside. But if this starts May 1st and runs through October 31st, that's a long time for everybody on State Street. I've spoken with other merchants who agree with me that it does cause a parking problem and did not want to see it last that long. And I also wanted to put something out there that this is public property. And if we do this for one group on Lower State Street, is this going to open a can of worms and set a precedent for the rest of the town that everybody's going to want to go out onto the street, which would only be fair? You know, if anybody else came in front of this council and said, well, look what you're doing on State Street, why can't we do that? You know, if I came to you and said, can I move my offices out onto the, you know, onto the curb or onto the street? I think you'd have to let me do that. So it does set a precedent in this town. And I think that we also need to address that. So I think we can all work together. I would like to work together and see, you know, see this happen for all of us. But these particular things need to be addressed. You know, garbage, one of them, and parking, one of them, and that it's cleaned up every single night. Or when there's a storm, things are taken down and put away, because it was all over the place, you know, during the storms. And I know it was a difficult time. It was a difficult time for everybody, for all of us. I had to make concessions in my building with my tenants as well. So that's my opinion, and I hope we can all work together.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to share? Please. Remind everyone if you could state your full name and address for the record.
Rayona Clemens, 33 Elmwood Drive, here in Bristol. I have a concern. I'm all about small businesses. As most of you know, I host 12,000 people on a page that supports the community and business and what's going on in town. However, I also have a handicapped child who needs a van. And it's my understanding that those handicap parking places, there are two on State Street, just so you know, in Lower State. Neither of them has the striping for ramp access. One of them is probably wide enough. The other one, it's going to be tight, especially if somebody parks over the line. So my concern is parking. I'm all about businesses. I was at the restaurants. I was outside dining. I just thought it was fantastic. Could use a little bit better of a decor scheme to be more inviting, but we were so desperate in 2020 to get out. I mean, we took what we could get and we were grasping at straws. But my concern is the disappearance of those handicap spots. I cannot pull a handicap van in, open the door and let a ramp out in a spot that is not wide enough. And that's my concern. Now, if you drive along Thames Street, the handicap spots do have striping. And they're fantastic. State Street, not so much. So that would be my concern, because as it is, I struggle with a power wheelchair to get him in and out of buildings. And I can't get him into some of the food establishments because of steps. And there is no handicap ramp. So that's a problem as well. But my concern is that the handicap spots need to stay. And maybe we could get striping for a ramp. So that way there, people understand. They are clearly marked. Please don't misunderstand. But maybe get striping in, especially on the wider one up near B-Hop. So that way that people understand that, you know, that's van parking and you can't really squeeze your moped or motorcycle in there. All right, thanks. That's all I gotta say.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Peter Carvelli. I live at 315 North Lane, and I'm the new owner of what was the Statesman Tavern, soon to be Folia, hopefully in a few weeks. Good evening, members of the Town Council, Madam Clerk. I'll be very brief, and other town officials. So I am speaking in support of the ordinance, perhaps no surprise. I want to give my guests who come to the restaurant a choice to sit inside or to sit outside. It's such a beautiful street. It isn't just for my business. Street traffic is going to draw people in. I was painting the building the other day, and I can't tell you the number of people that just were wandering up and down, some several times. Nobody picked up a paintbrush to help me, I might add. But they walked into these stores. They said, oh, there's Wink and there's this store. And they went in and they went out and they continued to enjoy State Street. It's really a great place. I didn't even realize how wonderful it was till I was standing outside there. You can envision people walking safely up and down the street as they did when COVID was there, but COVID is hopefully in the rearview mirror, it's a wonderful piece of the town to allow people to do this. They might come to my restaurant. They're going to go to other restaurants. They're going to walk down the street. They're going to go by the water, have an ice cream, and they're going to enjoy the town. And it is going to draw more people to this town. So I certainly am in favor of it. I certainly think any parking issues can be addressed. We certainly pack them in for the parade and for the concerts. People seem to find places to park. I'm not suggesting that that solves all of the issues, but I would respectfully ask that you support this ordinance, supporting all of the small businesses on State Street. But I think I believe that it's going to support the entire downtown during a time when we can all use it. Thank you for the time.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Celso Ramirez. First time that I really come here. I've been on bar 31 for the last 5 years. Very happy to be part of the meeting. Very short in my time, but I think it's so important that we all have to put our hand in support to do better for Bristol. And I know everyone get devastated by COVID, and I hope with that at the same time will bring opportunity to us to do something different in town. And I think that opened that parking spot. That was great move for all the help you guys did the last 2 years. It was phenomenal. I know all the owners, we spent a little bit extra money and tables and chair and hired extra staff. It was very challenged, but it was a wonderful month of July. I even beat the record in the history last year by that party outside. To me, that was fantastic. We have great reviews online. The support of the people, that was phenomenal. And I still have so many people make that phone calls and asking when it's going to be able again to have the opportunity to sit outside. And I know, I totally understand, it's been a lot of people that have his own preference by parking a spot, but I think only individual business, we only ask them for 2 parking. And people that really, they're all healthy, they can park and find a spot, they walk half a mile, you know what I mean, and enjoy all these beautiful trees outside when you're walking around in Bristol. That will be a good opportunity for everyone. And please help us out. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Tom Bergenholz, 366 Hope Street. I think we all agree that something should be done. And I know Brian, he's a good friend. And I know he wants more than 4,000 guests. He wants 5, 6, 8,000 guests. So, but with those guests on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday night, like he said, a lot more people are downtown, which is great. I run a couple of downtown as well. And what I always ask my customers is, what am I missing? What did we miss in your reservation here? What can we do better? I'm never against constructive criticism, and I learn most from my customers. But one of the things that Jane touched upon it briefly, but I don't know what the real solution is. I have a possible solution. Is it the trash? So when I walk down there in the morning with my dog, and I see Tony walking a lot down there, sometimes on a Monday morning, the trash is just unbelievable. It's all over the place. The bins are full. And I know in our section in downtown, the trash gets picked up on Fridays. So my suggestion or my solution may be if the trash could get picked up maybe once over the weekend down there, I think it would alleviate a lot of the issues. Or if you could somehow switch a date in a part of town where you pick up on Mondays downtown right after the weekends, as opposed to Friday before the weekend, I think it might alleviate some of those bins that are overflowing down there and just spreading stuff all over the place. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to share their thoughts? Thank you. Council.
Sorry, hold on a sec. So, we had gotten, Tim and I had gotten separately comments or letters, phone calls from other retailers downtown or other owners. And so we thought we would try to see if we could, work out a solution, because we do want to be able to, we understand the parking situation for some of the other businesses. And the restaurants are really important and that does bring people to town. There's no question about it. But that's 4 out of like maybe 10 businesses on that street. So we kind of went down and several of the people who are here tonight kind of came with us and just kind of like walked the area. And it was kind of put together in relatively short notice. So no one should be offended if they weren't there or didn't know about it. And we thought that we could come up with, there's a couple of spots that are not technically legal spots, but everybody parks in them anyway. And it's funny about the parking because we felt that, it's just our opinion, by the way, just, when I say my opinion, I don't, and maybe Tim's, I don't want to speak for anybody else because we've been talked a lot about this, that just flipping some of those handicap spaces to nearer to the driveways with like the Hope Street one on the other side, like it's right now, the first one could be the last one by B-Hop, and then it would be by their driveway, the light. And the same thing with the first one down at the end near Thames. So having said that, so we had this whole like plan that we thought was pretty cool and, an alternate that might, the restaurants would have maybe like 3 spots. And then the rest would be continued with parking. We could flip some of this around and maybe pick up 2 additional spots that would be officially be legal. Okay. Because everybody parks them in anyway. But right now there's like a bunch of questions that have come up. So I think I know that from my point of view, I want to see the project be successful downtown. And I also want to see them open up before 4th of July. And I do want to make sure that there's parking for other people right there that need to have, like elderly people that want to go in the antique store and want to go up to the massage or the therapist. So I was talking to Steve and the chief today. And I think the thing is that there's a whole bunch of potential rules that we were not aware of. We don't really know. Like if we move a handicap spot, what are the regulations? Is that like, are they grandfathered in or are they like the van issue came up? So I think that's some of the things that we, I think we can still continue with our idea of like, limiting the amount that the restaurants have, and the restaurants that were there, we're pretty happy with like what we had talked about. But the idea of them having like a final design and investing money right now, and they explained to us that a lot of things are back ordered. You wouldn't be able to really do that unified design. There's no plan for that right now, just to make it look better. A couple of people commented about that. So I think we may. And I think this is the best solution, and I'll let other people speak right for now, would be to sort of form a group of people, committee to look at this seriously, come up with a really good design for the future, sort of continue like this summer, but not have it be, it wouldn't be perfect. We need to address the parking. We still want to keep the parking spaces like with, where they agreed to address the handicap parking, address the, a couple of those areas, there are ramps that you could get down into the parking area, into the restaurant area. But some places are actually, there are other designs out there that it comes right off the sidewalk into the handicap, into an area. So that's going to take a little bit of time. So I think it may not be as perfect a solution as some of us thought we had as of like this morning. So I just want to say that from my point of view, because we've really tried to to work it out as best we can. Some people will never be, never don't want it down there at all. Other people are just totally enthusiastic about it. But I do think there's plenty of room for compromise, and it does bring people to town. And I think it's something that everybody, it's like one of those COVID things. There's a few things that have happened in all of our lives and all of our work lives that you go like, hey, this is an interesting way to do this. We were forced to do it during COVID, and now it sort of catches on. So, I think Newport, many other communities are doing ordinances and taking up spaces much narrower, like Broadway and Newport, which is in doing their ordinances. So I think there's a lot of work that we still have to do, but I think a lot of it is going to be on the part of like all of you sitting out there, to really get together, what this is going to look like, what do you envision? How would we do it? How do we make sure we accommodate everything? And hopefully by 2023, we have like a way better design and a way better look than we might have this year. So that's just my thoughts, and that's sort of the travel of what, I have like been, working on and thinking about in relation to this in an attempt to try to bring some people, bring this together with Tim and other people. I know people reached out to everybody here, but we had just sort of crossed paths and worked on that. So that's my thoughts.
So I'm going to ask that we stop just for a moment. If you'll notice, the camera is focused on
I use a pencil because that's what it is. Chapter is 1719. Yeah, and Paiva was the 10. Oops. Yeah, they only have one, so that's when they're gonna have it. That's the United Brotherhood Holy Ghost in Trinity. 1719 is the Santa Crystal. Right. Yes. Well, no, this is the procession. This is just Santa Crystal, and this one is the Trinity. This is the last of it. Correct. Correct. Yes. There you go. Right. Yep.
All set?
Right.
You got it.
Coming back on.
One of the 4 cameras is working, so we'll just use one camera and keep going.
Yeah, well, there's 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 4 of them. Wait, yeah. Oh, this one, yeah. We have 4. Yeah.
Let's switch in more. All set? Great. So can you turn that on and we'll,
It's on.
We're
it's
on.
The top right corner, so I think once you start talking, it'll pick up here.
perfect. Okay. All right. All right. So we're going to resume the meeting. Apologize for the delay there, having some technical issues, but we are back online. We had ended with Councilman Perrella sharing her thoughts in regards to the support of the project. If that's a nice, quick synopsis, obviously.
I was pretty much done with my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I also want to speak in support. I think COVID has changed everything we do, from shopping online to dining, and especially dining. I think people feel more comfortable dining outside for the safety factor of that. And when you look at State Street and you walk down State Street, you see this beautiful water in front of you. And I think you just fall in love with that experience. And I think that's what we want for this town. I think we want to make the town resilient and stronger than it was before. And what I heard tonight was it creates an experience and enhances the town. It creates that vibe. And with the marina opening, it's also going to be providing more outside dining, but it allows all the establishments to kind of work together. So you dine at one place, you may come back and go to another restaurant, and you keep coming back to Bristol. So it keeps Bristol resilient. This is how I look at this ordinance. And I think in a way, I think we can address in my motion that we wouldn't move those handicapped. So those spots were not handicapped. And Jade, I think we can address your thoughts about the trash problem. I think we can work with Mike Rosillo to add some verbiage, add some teeth in regards around trash cleanup. But I do think this is a very important step forward for us to try to expand and look at outside dining. We've scaled back the design, and I think it's going to be very, very important to the resiliency of it. So, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to go ahead and make a motion to approve the second reading. But I would like to add a sunset clause to this ordinance for November 7th of 2022, and to establish a committee that would be created to look at the long-term design. I think we need to look at an engineering design, something, if we're going to continue to do this, make sure it's going to be successful for all. We're going to need to look into a cost structure for permitting fees to make sure they're equitable. And I'd like to, if my colleagues are amenable, we could refer this to the Economic Development Coordinator, the Community Development, to kind of get a plan kind of done or a rough draft by January 2023 on that. But I am, just want to go on the record just saying I'm in fully support this ordinance. I think it's going to make a big difference in the town and driving businesses and keeping us resilient for the long term.
I'll second that, but can I ask if you could just include one other thing, Tim, and that is that this needs to be done with a real committee. The
Right.
people there, the businesses, the merchants in downtown, people on State Street, business owners like, building owners like Jane, business owners like the restaurants. And I mean like a real committee that isn't just consulted like 5 minutes before the plan is going to be due.
Sure.
I mean, to sit down and like look at other places, everybody's doing these. There's plenty of models around for over the years. I mean, people have shown me pictures in New York City. They're like, okay, but they don't really drive there. But they're like what it should look like, how it can look more uniform, more aesthetically pleasing. We've heard about Saratoga Springs. We've heard about Montreal, Canada. I think that there's other ordinances out there that we can revisit all of this. There's like a lot of other things that need to be seen, and what are some of the materials out there? So one of the issues when I was, maybe, I don't know if I should shut up, but one of the issues when we were talking is like the restaurant people, like, we're like, okay, we're okay with these spaces, but then we get this big bulky barrier that sort of like in order, you may have to take up another half a space for that. Well, what other materials are out there that are safe? Because we have to make sure everybody's safe when you're sitting in the street. So, I mean, those are the things that people have to look at. And I think there's no question that the business people downtown and in that area, and it's not just that area, it's like anybody else that wants to look at this full situation. I think we really need to make sure that there's a committee appointed. Doesn't have to be through us, in my view. It could be, the merchants getting together as a subcommittee, but it has to be working with the town hand in hand. So we don't come back with, because there was a lot of bad feelings because a lot of businesses were not consulted and talked to initially about this. And that's also part of the problem. And that happens a lot. And everybody's well-intentioned, but it doesn't always happen because it's like, we got a deadline. And the reason I think the deadline is important is because if you really want to have like a nice version of this next year, then, like the end of January date, it's going to go through our process here, and what we have to do. And then you guys will have to order whatever it is that is needed. So it's going to take a little bit of time. So this is something that, the businesses will have to, and the land, the building owners are going to have to do. Like, I know you're all super busy right now and maybe not, July and early August, but you have to get down to it pretty quick because there's a lot of work to do and really coming up with like what this is. And that's the one missing piece that Tim asked for at the last meeting is like, okay, what would the design be? Well, nobody really has an idea of what that should be. They want it to look nice, but nobody knows what that's going to be. So that's my long second to Tim's motion.
I'll include discussion with that.
Yeah, I won't
Mr.
discuss
Chairman.
again, but
Well, first of all, I want to thank Jane and Rayona for sharing some of your concerns. I know it's not always the easiest thing to come up here and share concerns like that when there's other folks that are out here supporting it. And so thank you both. And thank you, Jane, for calling me and talking to me about some of the questions that you had about this. I've noticed, I've done a little bit of research on what's happening in other parts of the country, and all other parts of the country are having this issue right now. Right now, the COVID protections and everything like that for businesses are starting to go away. So you're starting to see all kinds of local communities attempting to find some way of balancing some of the leeway that businesses were getting prior or during the pandemic and what things were like prior to the pandemic. And so I like to see that, folks are getting together and talking about this and finding some way to reach some sort of common ground on this. I think one of the things that we learned from the pandemic is that it's possible that we just didn't have a very good relationship with the outside like we do now. And one of the things I'll say about that is that there are some people that really love to be outside now and love to dine outside. But the other part of that equation too is that there's still people out there
who are afraid to go inside. And that's caused a lot of demand for outside seating. So if you can think of maybe some people that might have underlying health conditions, they might be a little bit wary of still going inside. If there's an elderly person along with you as part of your dinner party, there might be some concern about going inside still. There's folks that have had long COVID. They've had COVID for a very long time. They're still a little bit concerned about going inside. And so I think that's why we're seeing some of this demand still for some of the outside seating. But that's pretty much all I have to say about it. But it's definitely something I think that a lot of other communities are dealing with. So it doesn't surprise me one bit that we're dealing with it here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, Brian, first of all, thank you for reminding us the action taken in October 2020. However, let's not forget it was October 2020. Since then, things do change over time and we adjust accordingly. And I can tell you, my position has not changed in terms of supporting business, all businesses, inclusive. And for that matter, actually, we are a few items in a little while, we're going to be approving sidewalk use and sidewalk liquor license, so that has been quite a change. We did not do that previously, and we do that now. That's something. So when we're talking about the dining, I think there's options right now. There's options being offered, and we certainly being very, very supportive of that. The other piece is, even though this was back in 2020 and so many months of work at it, this was quite surprising to me to see this three meetings ago for the first time since October 2020. And to that point, it was told at that time, and I went back on notes, that all the business on State Street was supporting this. That was a misrepresentation, because I was approached by quite a few businesses. They said they had no clue this was going to happen. And in fact, they were told this is a done deal. Well, that doesn't fly too well with me, folks. Okay. So as you can see, and obviously many issues have been brought up here. The parking, I still say we have 18 parking spots there. 2 of them are handicapped, and we need them. We as a town are paying for parking space, and now we're going to give up parking space. I'm a little confused about that piece, So with that being said, I certainly will not support this, especially when there's a misrepresentation and folks are told, at least for business, were told this was a done deal. Thank you.
So I get to put a bow on it. First off, thank you all for sharing your thoughts. Thank you for sharing them concisely. My colleagues and all of you brought up some great points. We had interviews at 6:30 tonight, and we had actually brought up with one of the interviewees that the 5 of us will typically vote unanimously, and we actually do about 95, maybe even higher than that % of the time. But when we don't, that at the end of the meetings, we leave and we say good night, and it's good to see you, and we'll see you next time. I think that's where we're going to be on this time, because I actually have some concerns about this, and I'm going to share a few of them with you. First off, everyone in this room, including this council, supports the businesses not only on State Street, but everywhere. And we've shown that in the actions, and no one's questioning any of that. Brought that up also earlier to say that even the people that are objecting to it quickly say that they do support the business and do a great job, because they do. And it was a tough time in COVID. What we did then, if we ever got back there again, I would absolutely vote again to do it. It was the right thing to do at the time. My concerns now is that we are in a different time. And I truly believe that public space is that. It's public space. There are exceptions. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples. We have a lease. This is public. We have a lease with Quido's Seafood. Everybody knows where it is, on Independence. And they lease X amount of square feet of town land, state land, that this council authorized and continues to authorize. I see that as a good example, and also kind of an apples and oranges. Obviously, it's in a different place. I don't find that it's a perfect comparison, because It doesn't limit the public to the use of that. Obviously, that space it does. But the space, you still have access to the waterfront. You still have access to the parking there. You still have access to Independence Park. Something else that I have concern about is the 18 spaces. Tony brought it up. 18 spaces, removing them. Since I've been on the council, not myself, but my colleagues and I voted for $1.4 million of parking spaces. What I speak of is $900,000 for Prudence Island Ferry Dock and $300 and something thousand for the State Street parking lot. Robin Rugg. We all are familiar with what happened with the conversations with the planning board and negotiating on behalf of the town for that parking spaces. There's 23 parking spaces, and I speak of the parking lot that is across the street from Prudence Island Ferry Dock. 23 spots, and we pay $1,625 a month during the summertime for the use of that space, so the public has a place to park, because parking is very difficult. So we very much value, we've spent a lot of money to make sure that we have parking down there, and removing those spaces just doesn't make sense to me. I understand why the businesses are asking for it, and I understand where the value was in COVID time. I understand it so much that if not, most of these colleagues sitting next to me were part of the conversation with the sidewalk use ordinance. My goodness, the time that we spent on that to make sure it was fair and even-handed, that if you have the space in front, you could have access. And I love that. I think my colleagues do. I think all of you do. I love coming downtown and seeing the life and the vitality down there. But the difference with the sidewalk use is that it's shared. It is not exclusive use. And I find that these parking spaces would be exclusive use. Another issue that I have is, how do we be even-handed? Like I said earlier, is that, Jane, I think you brought this up and others have brought this up. If we say yes to this, how do we then say no to, and no, none of the following examples that anyone's asked me? Common Pub, La Centrale, Cafe Central. What about Brick? What about Leo's? And Leo's has got the Church Street side. None of these businesses have asked us. I'm just using them as examples. How do we say no to them? And then how do we stop there? Those are restaurants. What if, Jane, you obviously half jokingly about having your offices out there. What would stop you from asking? And what would be our justification to say no? And then when does it stop from there? Is it, what if, and I'm going to half joke, and it's okay because I mean this half jokingly, is that it would be great if I could cordon off a part of the town common to have my vegetable garden there so I can leave my backyard open. Obviously, I'm joking, but you get the point, right? Is that it's public land. We have 46 new full-time slips going in with the Prudence, well, with the expansion of the marina. What that means is if you look at Prudence Island Ferry Dock, there's signs out there right now that require a sticker for you to park over there. So that's part of the marina parking. What I just said was those parking spaces that are there right now are not going to be there right now when the marina opens up. That is going to massively affect parking downtown. The parking lot that I mentioned that we rent, we pay $1,625, which, by the way, is a wonderful deal. It is a wonderful deal. But there's a proposal here for an annual fee of $100. That doesn't seem commensurate to me for the use of the land. And let me be really clear. It's not about the dollars. If you said it was $10,000 a month, that wouldn't convince me, because I truly believe that public space should not be contingent upon your ability to pay for it, the use of it. I think it should be there for everybody. And let me be clear, I don't think the businesses are trying to grab the land. I think they're trying to expand their businesses and do the best they possibly can. And I commend you for that. But I don't believe that it should be in public land. So if this council decides to take the next step and approve this, then I ask that not only do we address this and some of the concerns that you've already expressed, but where are we going to find these parking places? How does this affect the surrounding businesses? Tony mentioned a few businesses reached out to him. They reached out to me too. I had expressed my concern at the first reading or before that, and a few businesses reached out and said, I don't want this. And it's not because I don't support the businesses, but I asked that we look into that. I asked that we also look into how the marina is going to affect this. And I think marina is wonderful, but it's going to affect the parking. And we spent all that money for those parking spaces. How do we summarily wipe them out? This council will spend an hour sometimes about one parking space across from a driveway on a side street because parking is so important. But then this to me is summarily writing off 18 spaces, writing off in the sense of availability to the public. I think, again, it is not a negative reflection on the business's request. But at the end of the day, it's public space to me. So I ask that we look at that if we go that way. Also proposed on here was the town paying and installing the blocks. I disagree. That should be the responsibility. If this council wants to go that way, then that should be the business's responsibility, not the town's responsibility. But at the end of the day, for me, it comes down to it's public land, it's public space. How do you say no after you say yes? At what point is a no? I don't know how you say no at that point. How do you look at a business and say, no, you can't, but yes, you can? And we did that with the sidewalk use, but we took the time to look at it and say, do you have the space in front? Can a wheelchair go in front of your business safely while people are dining outside? If it's no to that, and there's a couple other things, of course, then you can't have it. But that was fair. How do you be fair on this? If you have a parking space in front of your business, how do we tell you no? I don't know. And how do we not care about those parking? So I went on. I apologize, but I wanted to convey those thoughts. Is there anyone else that wanted to share anything?
Yeah, I just wanted to,
Certainly.
yeah.
And
Did I say something that bothered you? I apologize.
Oh,
No,
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 no.
no.
I
I
just
think
want to address some of your concerns.
everybody talks about 18 parking spaces being gone. And like, in my intent is not to have that happen. It's to have, people being able to have their spaces, some spaces in front of their building. So I would say there's probably like nine to 10 spaces that would be used up. With this plan, not 18. But I know that 18 is the number that gets tossed out there all the time, which is like all the parking. I don't think there's ever an intent, and nor was it last year, if I recall, that every single space was taken up. People still were able to park in front of some of those, on those angles. So I just want to make that as my big thing. And I think the other, I just want to make that part of the record. And the other thing I think that's really important that you said, Nathan, I think one of the things is absolutely you're right. And a lot of it, and I think that's where it's like, I agree with Aaron. There are still people out there that, COVID is still going crazy. And there's still people out there that really want to be outside. I mean, I'm worried about it. I got a big event this weekend. I want to get sick. But I think that we should go forward this year. But I think the point of putting that sunset in and doing this committee is to be able to look at all of those issues. I really do. And if people feel better saying it's going to be a town committee that we're going to appoint the people ourselves, and that's fine. And it can go either way. But I do feel that, this sort of lets it kind of go on with, like, they agreed that they could get by with like 3 to 3.5 spaces. Then, and the rest would be for the retail. Then I think that, I'm talking about like in front of Judge Roy Beans, in front of like Statesman and Bar 31 together, and BHOP. I think that they can go on this year, try to make it look like as nice as possible. And then by next year, we actually can make a better determination based on an actual plan. Is this something that we want to do? What are other people in other communities doing at it? Because this is really getting to be like an issue. And all around the country, I think, as was pointed out. So we'll have a little bit more time to be able to like study all that aspect. But people, all retailers, everybody, retailers, business, restaurants, it's like, not only was COVID a devastating hit, but the economy is a devastating hit right now to either people going out and eat or just the food costs and just trying to like make it be available. So I don't think it'd be a good time to just not do this.
Tim?
I just wanted to address some of the parking issues that in part of the design that we worked on collectively with the businesses and Councilwoman Perler, that JR Beans, that handicap spot at the very end would stay in place. So if you come up, JR Beans would get 2.5 spots. And then if you come up to Harbor Realty and Wink, they would get 1, 2, 3 spots. And then if you come up to Bar 31, they would get 3. And then Hot Point and Bejeweled would get 3 parking spots for front of their store. And then that handicap spot way at the end where Bristol House of Pizza is, that handicap spot would remain in place. So we tried to make a compromise to sort of balance between the restaurants and the non-businesses where they could still have parking for their customers. Now, some of the dining will start to really happen when a lot of these businesses are closed, but they still have access to get into their business. So it wasn't sort of a blanket across all outside dining, just wanted to bring that to your attention. And then as part of the motion, I think we needed to look at the cost structure, and we need to look at the permitting and whether, Quito's, whatever they're paying, or we take a look at what their square footage is and we sort of build that in and we adjust that. But that's something we can explore with the committee that we're putting together. So I know this is sort of a working process, but I just wanted to speak to that and also that, the fairness of it all. Listen, I would love to have a swimming pool with a hot tub so I could do laps in the back of my yard, but I bought the house that I bought. It's sort of buyer beware in a way that, that's just not going to be in the books for me unless I sell my house. So I understand some businesses are going to be a little bit limited due to the nature of their location, and some are going to have a little extra. So it is unfortunately the nature of it. I wish I could say it's fair, but life isn't fair. It's sort of how it is. And we can sort of look at that and we can take a look case by case by case. So just to sort of, Chairman, just to sort of address some of your issues.
If I may, and obviously latitude with the example that you gave with the swimming pool.
Yeah.
Right off the top of your head. But I guess I would look at that one and say it's a public pool. It's not your private pool, it's everybody's pool and everybody gets to use it. And it's certainly, again, latitude because it was off the cuff.
Yeah.
Something else,
Yeah.
I absolutely understand.
I'm just,
And then I guess if this council goes forward, I would imagine I typically talk with the solicitor prior to meetings to make sure that we're on the same place and I understand everything, probably some of my colleagues do. It's my understanding after speaking with the solicitor that if this council decides it wants to go forward, then each of the businesses would then come in front of the council for an expansion of liquor license if they're going to serve alcohol out there, because there is no executive order in place anymore. So it would be an expansion of premises. So each one would need whatever they're looking to actually expand to, would have to do the normal standard procedure as we would with sidewalk use liquor licenses or other.
So even though they have the outside, most of them have outside use already on the sidewalk.
Mr. Solicitor, could you expand on that?
Excuse me, as part of your permitting process for outside dining on sidewalks, you in fact have included the expansion of liquor. If you're going to go beyond the sidewalk out onto the street, the businesses would have to petition the council and you'd have to go through the process to approve the expansion of the liquor service area, because the liquor licensing rules are totally different from the food service rules. So if this goes forward this evening, these businesses would be able to serve food, but it would have to stop at the curb line until such time as they petitioned you for expansion of the liquor service area.
and Mike, as far as the ordinance goes, we can add that sunset clause to it. And could we add some verbiage in regards to trash pickup?
Yeah, when you're ready, I've been listening to what you've been saying. When you're ready, let me know, and I'm going to read back some proposed edits to the ordinance.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Just want to be sure everyone's.
I want to hear from everyone, and then we've got a motion and a second to this discussion.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I know you folks are talking about outside dining. I agreed 100%. Okay. But I think that's why we have 13 restaurants or 13 establishments that we are approving, sidewalk use. So when we're talking about, dining outside, in the outside, we have 13 establishments that we will be approving tonight for renewals that have sidewalk use. When you call a restaurant for reservation, you have an option to say outdoors, indoors, and have that option. So, it's available right now. So it's not like if that is not approved, the additional space, it's not that there are no options. There are, as I just stated, 13 establishments have, sidewalk use requests.
But Tony, here's the problem with that too. Some restaurants only have 2 tables
Mhm.
and some have 10,
10.
or 5. So that in and of itself, it all depends on like the frontage of their building, if they have property on the side, if it's on their own, so that becomes like tricky as well. Some sidewalks are really narrow, so they really can't do it. Others happen to be located in an area like on Hope Street, very wide sidewalks. So I mean, that's not always fair either. And like, so you basically saying, well, go to a restaurant like that has more tables,
No, you're not encouraged there. I
No, I
mean,
know,
it's a
but I mean,
choice,
it's just like
but I use a very simple code. I use CFC, courteous, fair, consistency.
Any other conversation from the council? No? Okay. So Mike, go ahead.
So this is what I've heard. We'll see if the makers of the motion and the seconder agree. The first thing would be section 1A, where it talks about the area to be utilized. At the end of that sentence, from Oak Street to Bay Street, I've added excluding handicap spaces. That would be the first change, excluding handicap spaces.
Correct.
Next change would be that we would add a section I that says participating businesses shall keep the premises trash-free at all times. Failure to do so may result in revocation of the expansion permit. The next note I have, and this is really something that I think Nathan brought up, and I don't know if Mary and Tim, if you agree. In section F, it says the town shall supply safety barriers. What I wrote is the business shall supply safety barriers along the perimeter of their seating area as approved by the town. That was a note I made. The final note I have, which would be section J, is that the provisions of this ordinance shall expire on, I put it December 1, at January 1, but since this ends October 3rd and 1, I figured it gives you a month. Provisions of this ordinance shall expire on December 1, 2022, if not reviewed by action of the town council.
So I'm like, oh, are you done? Sorry.
Those are the 4 items that I picked up on.
So I have two things. One is on F, the town shall supply the safety barriers. I don't agree with that in this particular ordinance today. I agree with that as they come up with the plan for next year, because I think the town already has them. I mean, the whole point is to come up with something that would be uniform, would look nice, would suit the character of the community. And in order to do that, people have to have some lead time to be able to order, to have an idea. Why would you want the businesses to find a bunch of purchase or to lease or whatever you do with those things when you don't even have a plan? We don't have a plan. I mean, right now, we just have to, it's going to be more similar to last year, but with maybe a little bit fewer spots, more parking spots, I mean. So I don't think that that is appropriate for today. I do think it's appropriate in the future. I don't think it's appropriate for now. And then the other question I have is the whole idea of us having this committee and setting deadlines so that we actually have people and have a plan so that we're not in this position again next June. Is that just something that goes as a separate motion and is not in here?
Absolutely.
As we weren't sure about.
I would not make that part of an action ordinance.
Right, okay,
Following this discussion, vote, you should make that motion.
okay.
Could I just ask that this,
One second. One second.
Yeah,
Council,
yeah, thank you.
you, absolutely.
I just asked the solicitor if it is in, or the council, instead of the December 1st, maybe you might think to go right to the December 31st, because I think the Christmas committee's got some activities in the pipeline that this might work nicely with them. So giving it to the end of the month might be a little better than the beginning of the month. I don't know if that matters.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Chief?
Yeah.
This afternoon, I did have the pleasure of meeting with Vice Chair Perella. And I did go back to the office and look further into, I think it was Miss Riona Clemens had mentioned about van accessibility. The only thing I would ask the solicitor of the council to include is I went to that area just before the council meeting. And I may have some concerns that it needs to be ADA compliant. When you put the barriers around the certain businesses in the parking areas, you may be cutting off a curb cut. I don't know specifically where the barriers were going to go, so I cannot make that determination. So I would think that if that area is going to be outside, it would have to be ADA compliant. Also, if you alter the handicap area such that if you put a barrier next to a handicap parking spot, you now may have to, I should say, follow 2010 new guidelines that say you need that 5-foot barrier for van accessibility. Prior to that, they're all grandfathered in if you do not make any changes to that particular area. That information can be found on the governor's website for disabilities. And that's where I garnered that information prior to the meeting. So I think it's a concern that if you're going to barrier that area off, you may be blocking that van opening of the door that may be coming right into the side of the barrier. So if the council sees it fit that any of that outdoor dining would be ADA compliant.
Mhm.
It's a great point. Thank you.
Yeah.
Is there any other discussion? So I'll just say one more time, I don't think I'm going to change your minds, and that's okay. But I ask that we seriously consider what our next steps are when the next request comes in front of us now. And not the committee, this council is responsible to make those decisions. And what are we going to do when somebody asks us, business or resident? And how do we be fair and even-handed about it? And on that, I will call for Mr. Administrator, I'm sorry. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I'm sorry, just for consideration, if this is going to be extended to, I understand what Councilwoman Perella is saying, that this is just an interim this year. When we originally set this up, it was in an emergency situation, so we grabbed various blocks, whatever we could find. The aesthetics wasn't exactly the best for historic area, but it did the job. I think, and I stated earlier today, that if this is going to be permanent, it should be permanently designed. Because there are, once we started talking about it, as the chief alluded to, different requirements were being triggered. Now, were there dining room requirements for ADA? I don't know. There's certainly a series of parking with requirements now. Barricades have to meet a certain standard to stop a certain size vehicle. There's all kinds of engineering that needs to really be looked at if it's going to be permanent. We spend money on engineering for, right now, we're working on a usability of Burnside Street, and there's an engineer actually working on that. So I think if the council so elects to do this summer, you're taking a gamble. But I understand the urgency, and this has been going on for a couple of years. But if this is going to be permanent, let's make it look more appropriate. And let's design it properly so we know it's safe. So I would say that it would require an appropriation of some sort, but in future years. But again, I think you all heard it. It's a really tough deliberation because there are many businesses that don't want to say no to this because they don't want to be portrayed as against business. But there are a good number of parking spaces that are used by every resident for every purpose downtown, including the library, the post office. And so it isn't taken lightly, but if it, as somebody said, if rising tides bring all boats up, maybe it's a good thing, but it needs to be done properly. What we had during the emergency is certainly not appropriate standards for permanency. So I would say an appropriation should be considered in the future to do it, to have a consulting engineer look at it and come back with a plan.
And to the administrator's concerns, I definitely agree. And that with our original motion that we were all starting to put together, we would put together a committee that would create a long-term design. And it kind of speaks to all your points with getting PAR engineering involved and really making sure that we have a design that's really fitting to that historic area. And that's sort of phase 2 of this. When you agree.
It addresses the, the concerns, like, I don't think that those handicap spaces are in the right spot for today's requirements. For example, I think they could be moved. Obviously, to move them now, which we thought would be like, just flip the signs to better locations. Obviously, we're wrong on that, so, but it needs to be part of this longer term plan. I think, like, I understand what you're saying, like, when we talked earlier. I think that that's why we sort of, I think this year, we're already in June, we just need to kind of move on along. So if it's possible to use the same barriers, and then the cost, would probably shift to the businesses once you come up with a long-term plan, or a lot of the cost, or maybe it's a grant, that's a partnership, whatever. I mean, I'm a little concerned about the businesses taking on and finding and investing in anything right now, since it's not going to be long-term, outside of their tables and chairs and stuff like that, about the barriers in section F that Mike had suggested. I just think that that should not be included.
So in section F, again, if the three of you who are in favor, you would leave it the way it reads, except I would add that are ADA compliant. That'll address the chief's issue. So if that's what you would like in F, that's the way it would read, the way you read it there. And after the word area, it would say that are ADA compliant. And the only other thing you need to decide before you vote is if the sunset date is December 1 or December 31.
Yeah, and I'm fine with December 31.
My only point about that, it doesn't really matter. The question about what the Christmas festival is planning, I mean, the concern about having the barriers and everything set up through the holiday season is it limits parking for people that are they're not going to be using the restaurant for the most part, unless we have exceptionally warm. So those parking spaces need to come back to the businesses, for holiday shopping. So that's why I don't.
This is written
this
so
would
that
be-
it ends October 31.
Right, I know.
Yeah, this is made of October, right? So we
Yeah, so,
wouldn't.
I mean, I
it
don't
wouldn't-
agree that we should. And if the Christmas festival is planning something for like, when would they do it? I wouldn't want to keep that whole Christmas weeks having all this stuff set up. I mean, I would imagine if we got a storm or whatever, these guys are going to take their stuff in. If we get a hurricane in October, they're going to take their stuff in and probably not put it back out. So I would not go with like the end of December.
Okay.
I would go with maybe like
You
a
had
week after
suggested
November.
November
You want,
7th.
how about November? I had originally said, you want November 7th? That was originally, because Mike, I figured October 31st, and then it's like a week or so later.
Right, which means the council would have to act during the month of November then to avoid, if you didn't want it to expire.
Right.
All right, so we're going to plug in November 7th into new subsection J. We're going to leave subsection F as is with the addition of the ADA compliant. We're going to have a new section I on trash free. And in section A, we're going to add excluding handicap spaces.
Mike,
Correct.
typically when we make motions like this, we don't specifically call out following state and local ordinances unless, but there was a couple of points brought up about ADA compliant dining room. And Mr. Administrator said that, and I speak of the parking spaces, and I'm thinking of the tilt and all of that. Is there, I don't want to get into the particulars right now. I'm asking, does that need to be part of the motion, or would that just be assumed that we would follow all state and local guidelines?
Right, so in every ordinance that you have, that assumption is there.
Perfect.
So because if the other ordinance is on the book that requires X, Y, and Z to happen, you'd be in violation.
Sure.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Okay. Any other discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, were you saying that you wanted to get to the bottom of what it will look like when we have businesses come and make these requests again? Did you want to do that right now, or is that
There's
something?
no possible way we could. Right now.
Okay, yep, okay.
Yeah, there's too much.
But that'll be on a future,
Yes.
yep, okay.
Well, depending on what this council does.
No, definitely. I agree 100% that we need to seriously think how fair this ordinance is and how this fits with everybody else in town.
I agree.
And I foresee some issues that this is not coming forth right now that are going to play out. But anyway,
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, so that was a 3-2 vote in favor.
Then Mary was going to make a
Oh, right.
motion
Certainly.
about setting up the committee.
Right, so I think you have a lot of what I said already, Melissa, but I think that we would have propose a committee that is, well, first of all, it would be referred to Economic Development
Yeah.
Coordinator and to the Department of Community Planning
Community development.
and the Administrator. I think that's what you
Yep.
had right.
Yep. the
And
administrator.
then to come up with, members that are truly representative of like the business community and the public, people live down there too. And not just State Street, but that are actually going to be a committee that are going to have real input, do the research on what this should look like, take a, look at what maybe some of the other communities have been doing, some of the other ordinances. And my thought is that this should be done and presented back to the council. And we don't really know it next, because it's an election year and all that. We don't know what the schedule will be. But, by one of the later meetings in January of 2023,
Three. yeah.
so that we can begin the process of reviewing the plan, figuring out if we have to have public hearing, whatever we have to do, so that by next May, this stuff is, ordered, it's in place, they're ready to go. And we're not sitting here in June, figuring out what's going to happen.
And Mary, if we could just add to that motion that, this committee would also look into a cost structure in
Okay.
regards to permitting fees. I think it's really important that we do that.
Oh, yeah, I think the whole issue, like the handicap, the cost structure, the handicap accessibility issue, all of these topics that have been raised, do we want to move, do we want to reconfigure the parking in some way? Do we want to reconfigure the handicap parking? But at least it will give us time to look and see what can actually be done, because right now we really it seems simpler, but it's obviously, after I met with you all today, it's not simple. So, but
Right.
So that's a motion.
yes, that is.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there discussion?
Could I just add something?
No.
Yeah. Yeah, I know you were joking. You're talking about a committee, and presumably Melissa as clerk at some point is going to advertise for members.
Well,
of-
that's the only thing I'm not clear about,
How many, do you want to limit this to 7, or you're just going to interview people and decide, or?
My original thought was it doesn't even have to be like a town governed committee, it could just be like the Merchants Association, but I don't know what people think, if we
Right.
should appoint the people or anybody,
well,
Mary,
appoint-
Mary, the only thing I would say would have it to be a portion of restaurants, but a portion of a resident, a couple residents and some non-business, non-restaurants.
Right.
So we don't want the whole thing to be restaurants, right? So it needs to be a good mix.
Right,
That's the only thing I
I just
think.
know sometimes when we talk about committees, sometimes they happen and sometimes public input doesn't always I don't mean in our meetings, but sometimes when we say we're gonna do a plan, it happens quick. And people don't really get assignments to do, and discuss, where everybody can be on board, if this is what we're all gonna agree to. And this is what we're, as a bit, you're not gonna get every business to agree, but this is what the business community is coming for. This is what they're suggesting it looks like. This is what the town has looked at in terms of what it needs to comply with, the engineering part of it, like a real partnership in that way. So I don't know who should appoint these people. I'm happy to do it.
May I suggest that I don't think we can get to the bottom of this evening. We could add to an agenda item for our next meeting and have discussion before that. We could at least have some proposals, because I think we can't,
Right. yeah.
we're not going to get to
Because we're not
clarity.
gonna
Yeah,
start this right
no, I
now
agree.
anyway. We just need these guys to get open if they're gonna open this
We
year.
can have more discussion at our next meeting. Oh, is that okay?
Yeah,
Everybody
that's
all right?
fine.
So there was
Yes.
a motion. I'm sorry, was there a second?
Second.
So Tim seconded discussion?
So do you want to just put this, are we gonna vote on it and then just say the details are gonna flesh
Yes.
out? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
Hearing no other discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I'm actually going to abstain. I feel like if I vote for this, this goes
That's
against
true.
my first vote. So
I'll do as well.
I'm
I'll
for
abstain.
knowledge.
Yeah.
But I can't get there.
It makes
So
sense.
Well, we all still like you guys,
I like you too. So
just to your point earlier.
thank you for the polite dialogue all. I would expect nothing less. So
Thank you.
May I? Mr. Chairman and members of the council, the next item on the agenda is C2. This is ordinance 2022-6, Chapter 16, Motor Vehicles and Traffic. And this is for parking prohibited at all times for a no parking box on Cook Street. This is second reading for adoption.
Move that we approve it.
Second.
Motion made by Tony, seconded by Tim to approve. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
The next item on the agenda is D1. This is Sally Evans for First Congregational Church, 300 High Street. This is a request for a one-day dancing and entertainment license for a craft fair on July 2nd.
Based on the recommendations, I move that we approve it and follow all the ordinances.
Second. Mary.
Motion made by Tony, seconded by Tim to approve. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is D2. This is Neil Thompson for Pizza Hut, and this is at 381 Medicom Avenue. This is a request for vitrilling license, and this is under new ownership.
Based on the positive recommendations, make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion made by Tim, seconded by Tony to approve. Is Neil here? No. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? By the way, I was going to give him a 30-second commercial. That's why I was.
Mr. Chairman and members of the council, the next item on the agenda is D3. This is Richard Carenzi for the Portside Tavern, 444 Thames Street. This is a request for sidewalk use and sidewalk alcohol service license. You will note that I gave you a late agenda item. Mr. Carenzi did contact me via email. He's unable to make this evening's meeting, and he is requesting a continuance to the next council meeting of June 22nd.
Motion to continue to the June 22nd meeting.
Second.
Motion made by Tim, seconded by Tony to continue. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman and members of the council, the next item on the agenda is D4. This is Thomas Bernier, president of the British Car Motor Show of New England. This is a request for the mobile food establishment event permit on the field off of Asylum Road for the British Car Show event on June 11th.
Based on all the positive recommendations, make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion made by Tim, seconded by Tony to approve. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman and members of the
Oh, he
council.
was here. Could you?
Mike Burns is here.
So we'll give a delayed 30-second commercial. We'll give you a moment.
Mike Burns, Wally Street, Bristol. I just make one comment. I don't know if this type of ordinance pertains in every town to food trucks, but food trucks sort of blossomed during COVID because the operators were real entrepreneurs, and they operate on a very thin margin. And if every town and city charges $75, food truck operators have a problem in Rhode Island. Maybe it needs to be a state law. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't feel like that was a commercial for the British Car Show. So
Well, yeah, make sure you come on June 11th.
There
It's a
it
great
is.
show.
Yay, right, there we go. All right.
we had a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Good luck with the event.
Mr. Chairman and members of the council, the next item on the agenda is E1. This is the sidewalk use license renewals for 2022, 2023.
Based on all the positive recommendations, I move that we approve it.
Second.
There's a motion made by Tony, seconded by Tim to approve. I just needed a point of clarity. I know that there was a suggested change with Roberto's. With the proposed was 3, if I have this correct, 3 tables against the wall of Hope Street, and what was suggested by our Ray Falcoa was 2. I just wanted to bring that to the council's attention. I don't think there was any other adjustments suggested. So that's what is being proposed as we approve. Okay, hearing nothing else. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, and members of the council, the next item on the agenda is E2. This is the sidewalk alcohol license renewals for 2022 and 2023.
Based on the positive recommendations, make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion made by Tim, seconded by Tony to approve. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is E3. This is the itinerant mobile food establishment renewals for 2022 to 2023.
Everybody's a little
Wait.
gun shy with the $75. Is that what's going on?
Based on the recommendations, make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion made by Tim, seconded by Tony to approve. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman and members of the council, the next item on the agenda is F1. This is Ana Isabel do Reis Crudo. This is the Rhode Island Day of Portugal Committee with a request to fly the Portuguese flag with a flag raising ceremony on June 6, 2022. You will also note the late item agenda. I did verify and qualify all 250 signatures required by the flag policy.
Ooh, I'll take this one. Nice job getting 250 signatures. The goal of our flag policy was not to make it overly arduous. I know it was in this instance, and this was there are events, not just this, multiple events like this that are, I would say, innocuous. So it wasn't supposed to make that difficult, but an excellent job getting the signatures necessary. So
This is the first
Yeah.
one, right, Mr.
this
Chairman?
is the first one, as far as I can recall.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes. Is there a motion?
I make
Motion
a
to-
motion.
Go ahead, Tony.
I make a motion that we approve the hoisting of the flag.
Second.
Motion made by Tony, seconded by Tim to approve. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman and members of the council, the next item on the agenda is F2. This is Tiffany Cavalieri, 38 Fatima Drive. This is a request for a curb cut to extend the driveway. You will note they're normally on the consent agenda, but there is a recommendation on this from the DPW, so we just need to get that on the record.
So the recommendation was to deny as requested, but the recommendation to this council is to approve if the homeowner were to plant a tree approved by the warden, if I'm paraphrasing, but by the tree warden prior to any construction starting. For myself, it seems to make right and appropriate sense. So I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I was happy to hear about the,
You're good?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I want to do that, no problem.
Okay,
I'll plant another tree on the other side. There we
perfect.
go. I already talked to Steve, the tree warden this morning.
You could state your name and address for the record.
Jamie Cavalieri, 38 Fatima Drive.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I talked to Steve and he's the tree warden and we're gonna put the tree on the other side and no problem.
Seems right and appropriate.
Yeah.
What's this council's pleasure?
yeah, I was happy to hear about the remove and replace the trees. So
Yeah,
I'll
no
make a,
problem. Yeah, no problem at all.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion made by Tim, seconded by Tony to approve. Is there any
Can I
other
just-
discussion?
I believe that you may need to add that the expense shall be borne on the petitioner to plant the tree.
You
Is
just
that
did.
correct? Yes.
Yeah, I'm
So-
gonna pay for it.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman and members of the council, the next item on the agenda is G1. This is the Bristol Prevention Coalition. We received 2 letters of resignation, one from Scott Pinella and one from Betsy Cambra.
I make a motion that we approve with the letter of thanks for their service.
Motion made by Tony, seconded by Mary for a letter of thanks and their resignation. We typically advertise for this, I recall, I don't recall.
I believe they're working on their new bylaws, which will change the number of committee members.
Okay,
So I think
So
we'll
we can
wait
hold
for
off.
that before we,
okay. We'll wait to
advertise.
hear from you. All right. We had a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman and members of the council, the next item on the agenda is H1. This is Charles Galligan of 83 Fails Road. This is a request for support for the USHR 3733, the Essential Caregivers Act. This is continued from April 20th, 2022.
Thank you. If you could state your full name and address for the record, please.
Charlie Galligan, 83 Fails Road.
Perfect. So this was in front of this council as noted by the clerk on April 20th. We had some discussion about it, and it's back in front of this council to support or deny the draft resolution.
I will note there's a revised draft
Thank you.
resolution on there.
Did you want to?
No, I mean, I gave you guys my spiel a couple months ago. I listened to your questions. I hope, I addressed them then. I think the revised addresses a concern you had, Mr. Chairman. So I'm happy to answer any questions, or if you've had a chance to review the material, any questions you have. I mean, just to reiterate, it's just to a resolution to encourage our US rep, David Cicilline, to support HR 3733, which is the Essential Caregiver Act, which supports humane long-term care visitation, and to encourage Senators Reid and Whitehouse to author a companion Senate bill. So I'm part of this national organization, advocacy organization, urging reps and senators across the country to do, and we're making more and more progress, but still lagging here in Rhode Island. So every little bit helps.
Council?
Mr. Ch-
Bye.
I was gonna say, maybe you could just, very briefly sum up the purpose of it, just for people who might be watching this, so they can also reach out, to their congressional.
Yeah, sure. I mean, anybody can look up essential caregiver movement, essential caregiver laws, but they're just as I say, just to, the pandemic was horrible. Nobody knew what was going on 2 years ago, a little over. But I often would say that our country showed a lot of innovation in researching and developing and getting the vaccine out in like 8 or 9 months. And now it's over 2 years later and we still don't have, appropriate laws, the necessary laws to prevent this horrible isolation that happened at nursing homes from ever occurring again. And I've seen it, I've been in a nursing home every day for 10 years now. And whether people survived COVID, never got COVID, died from COVID, it's just horrible, horrible, the stories. If you know anybody in the industry, anybody with loved one in a facility, I'm not going to give you my spiel here, but if you want to buy me a beer someday, it's horrible, and it's completely inhumane, and it's fixable. It's easily fixable. We talked to a bunch of congressmen and women around the country. The last one I met with a few days ago over Zoom, I think it was a health aide for a rep in Massachusetts. And I think 5 or 6 times she used the phrase like a no-brainer, like this is a no-brainer, to which we say yes. But I think our federal delegation needs a little bit of a push. So, and we go by all the health protocols that all the staff goes by. We're not expecting facilities to open up the doors widely, for future pandemics. But as it happens, like here in this, we got a law passed here in this state, but it's kind of impotent at this point because the Department of Health is yet to finalize the rules that would govern the law. So we're going at this in a state by state basis, which is slow, but we need a federal law, and something has to be done because there are a lot of great nursing homes around the country. They're all short staffed. There's a nationwide shortage, as you know, but sadly there are some unscrupulous nursing home operators throughout the country who enjoy the ability to kick families out a little too much. And they're still now, I get calls all the time and emails from people across the country where they're kicking families out for a flu outbreak or a neurovirus outbreak. In Illinois, a couple of weeks ago, a scabies outbreak, and just banning visitation. So we just need these laws to protect these people. Have no voice. They can't speak for themselves. So.
Well, I say thank you very much for bringing it to our attention, and because it's really an important topic, and also for your advocacy and working on this.
Thanks, Mary.
Nationally.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to support the Essential Caregiver Act. And thank you again for coming back twice, I know, and giving us a breakdown of the whole act, because I think it's very important to be able to give your loved one the care that they deserve.
Yeah.
Motion made by Tim, seconded by Mary to support the resolution. Is there any other discussion?
Charlie, I just want to thank you for coming here and sharing this with us again. I know you've been working on this issue for a very, very long time. I know that you've put a book together of people from all over the states, and it's a national issue. So thank you for your continued hard work on this.
Yeah. Thanks, Aaron.
Thank you for your persistence and patience.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
So Charlie, I had said to you that I don't support resolutions because I don't like what happens to them afterwards. We don't know what happens, but your earlier comment about it being a no-brainer is absolutely on point in regards to this. So all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Mr. Chairman and members of the council, the next item on the business, on the agenda is I1 and its new business. This is Town Administrator Contenty. This is the renewal of the memorandum of understanding between the Town of Bristol, the Bristol Police Department, and the Friends of the Bristol Animal Shelter.
Mr. Administrator?
Sure. As you recall, we're going to revisit this after 1 year. This was the agreement for the Friends of the Animal Shelter to accept what do they call them? Dogs? What are they? I'm drawing a blank.
MOU.
No, talking
They're
about
not the stray
dogs.
dogs that don't have homes from other parts of the
Oh,
country.
yeah.
It's a longer way of saying
They were
it.
looking
Rescue
for-
dogs.
Rescue
Rescue dogs.
dogs.
So
They
it
were
was
looking for the
such an
big word.
easy word and it wasn't coming. Yeah, so it's been successful. Last time I checked, I think they had 80, chief, 80 dogs that they adopted out.
There was a total of 60 taken in. I believe there
Oh,
was
great.
49 cats and 16 dogs. And the reason why the number is higher than 60, there was some animals born inside of the shelter while we were housed.
Oh.
We were doing the math over here and did not make
I
sense.
know.
Thank
so
you for that
plus it
clarity.
didn't for me either.
No issues. The agreement is working as planned and they
Excellent.
just asked for one additional year. So this next agreement would be for 2 years.
Sounds appropriate. Council?
I move that we approve the agreement
Second with a
Motion.
question.
with the 2-year.
Motion made by Mary, seconded by Tony to approve. Tony?
Just number 3, just for point of clarification for me, the animal control supervisor will have the sole responsibility in utilizing and supervising court mandated community assignments.
I'll
Could I have
answer
a
that,
little
chief. So
clarification?
historically, when at the training school or the juvenile hearing board, when somebody was, a juvenile was mandated
Public service?
public service, they may do it at the animal shelter or adults for that matter that do community service. So the volunteers aren't supervising the
Gotcha.
those residents. It would be the animal control officer.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion?
Just want to say I'm glad to hear that there's no issues. I know we had some capacity, extra capacity there. We were wondering whether everything was going to go well, and it looks like it's a great relationship. So let's keep it going.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman and members of the council, the next item on the agenda is I2. This is the authorization for the referendum of the retail sales of cannabis in Bristol.
So, Mr. Solicitor, if you could just take a moment and share why this is on the agenda and what next steps potentially would be.
Absolutely. This has been the subject of a lot of media in the past few months, and the General Assembly did in fact adopt a statute permitting the sale of recreational use of marijuana, cannabis to adults. When they adopted this statute, they basically made it statewide, meaning an automatic opt-in for every municipality, except there is a provision that permits a municipality to opt out at a referendum that will be held in November. So my advice to Bristol and other municipalities is let's leave it up to the voters of the town to decide whether or not they want to have recreational marijuana sales within the borders of the town. This referendum, this resolution that is before you this evening would begin that process of ensuring that the voters here have that right in November. We'd meet all of the guidelines set forth by the state with regard to notice, et cetera. And we will know in November whether or not this town will allow the use of, the sale of recreational marijuana. So I highly recommend that you move forward with it.
So Mike, after, if this council takes the next step to give the public the choice here, we would also, be part of this discussion, not in this motion, but talk about zoning and.
Sure. You're going to have a resolution and a motion before you whereby you ask the planning board for its recommendation on which areas in town should be zoned for the sale of recreational marijuana in the event that the voters approve the resolution in November. So the idea is to have that in place prior to, so it will be automatic, and those applying for licenses through the state will know which areas in town they'll be able to establish their business.
Perfect. And it could mirror what we currently have. It could mirror what we currently have
For medical marijuana. In fact, that
Okay.
would be my recommendation, to just have it in the same zones that medical marijuana is permitted in today.
So if this council wants to take that next step, what is the motion, please?
So that motion is here, right?
Yep. This is one right here, isn't it?
Right.
So just supporting
You
as
would-
proposed.
So support is proposed, it's before you, it specifically says to direct the Director of Community Development and my office to draft an amendment to the zoning ordinance addressing recreational cannabis, setting forth the zoning districts in which cannabis-related uses shall be authorized for review and ultimate approval by the town council.
Don't we need to add it to the ballot?
Well, that's not.
Do we need to add it to the November ballot?
Just the
do
one
we-
that
Yeah,
Alex-
I'm sorry, I just read to you the second half of the resolution.
Oh,
The fir- So,
oh,
right, the
all right,
first
all right.
half is to present and forward the ballot question to the Board of Canvassers for submission to the Secretary of State to be included on the November 8th, 2022 general election ballot. So it's all one motion.
Right, I
So moved.
so move second.
Motion made by Tim, seconded by Mary. Is there any discussion?
Just a brief question. On the, where it says first, the bill currently, goes on, you're looking at 13% tax. The excise tax would be charged. So there'll be 3% at the local level, then 10 for the state.
That's how the state legislation was set up, the 10-3 split.
So,
Okay.
are you done, Tony?
Yes.
Okay. I guess my question, Mr. Solicitor, has to do with this 3% thing, right? So we got it's the Municipal Guide to Initial Implementation of the Rhode Island Cannabis Act from Senator Felag, passed this on to us. And, it essentially says if you wish to opt out, you can go the referendum route.
Right.
And then it says, you put the ballot on, people go and vote for it. Now, if it passes yes, what it sounds like is that we don't get any of the 3% excise tax at all. Because it says a municipality first it says, if a municipality wishes to exercise opt-out rights, then the municipality shall place the following question on the November 8th, 2022 election. And that's the resolution. And then it says a municipality which elects to opt out has also elected to forego the 3% tax.
Correct.
So if you've sent it to the ballot and it passes by the voters, you've opted out by passing it to the
No,
ballot.
no, the opt-out is if
Okay.
if those who are voting decide
Yeah,
they don't
okay.
want it in Bristol.
I wanted to clarify that
Sure.
because right here, whatever guidance we're getting, if
It's
you
a
read
little
it the right
ambiguous.
way that anybody would read
ambiguous.
laws, it's just not written right. So,
It's ambiguous. If
yeah,
you
and it's not Wally's fault. He's passing this on from, I think,
totally
somewhere
understood.
else.
I can assure you that if the voters want the sales here and retail establishments are set up, we will be receiving a 3% tax on the income.
I thought, Aaron, that is a wonderful small capture of a larger issue with this whole thing. And I'm just going to take a quick moment because this is the discussion period. And I know a couple of others wanted to share. Is my frustration with this is there's so many things left unanswered. The chief is going to express a couple of those that are near and dear to all of us, particularly to him and his department. It's frustrating to me that there are only questions. Well, there's not only questions. There's mostly questions here with very little answers of how you deal with someone under the influence while driving. If you can see me getting angry, I got to tell you something. Somebody smoking pot kills my family because we don't have systems in place, because we thought that 10% and 3% was more important than human life. I am so disappointed. Yeah, I'm very clear on this. So disappointed and our legislators, I mean, all of them, voting for this, saying yes to this, putting us in harm's way. I'm in the healthcare industry. I'm a doctor or a nurse or a respiratory therapist, but I see a lot of what happens. I'm in the respiratory world. And not considering these things is, and this is just the tip of the iceberg for me. I won't go on. I want to give other people the opportunity, including the chief, but I am just, this is one of many points that I feel like we're absolutely silent on, not addressed at all. And what happens when my family is walking down the street and the wafting marijuana comes out of cars? I drink beer. I have alcohol. I have a drink with my wife and friends. I'm not saying that what you do in your own home, it's none of my business. It's when it becomes my business that I care. And it becomes my friend's business and my residents' business. I represent everybody. I know we all do. Frustrates me. Chief, I know you wanted to add something, please.
Well, I'll speak individually first, and then I'll speak as the Vice President of the Rhode Island Police Chiefs Association. We certainly, and I certainly did not weigh in as an individual police chief on the law as it was written. We didn't oppose whether or not marijuana should be made legal or illegal. That was made up by the people that elected the General Assembly, and I will support that outcome. However, what I do not support, and I'll speak quite frankly, I won't quote the sponsor of the legislation, but he did. I stood shoulder to shoulder with 14 or 15 other chiefs the night that this was brought to a vote on the House floor. The Rhode Island Police Chiefs Association stood in lockstep against this legislation. I can tell you that the legislation is silent on impairment. We know during alcohol, a 0.08 is when an operator is impaired. The General Assembly failed to address driving while impaired in this legislation. I can tell you that we did send them copious letters on our letterhead from the Chiefs Association. We testified in committee. We met individually with leadership, and the law passed. If someone is impaired and they are driving a motor vehicle and they seriously injure themselves, their passengers, or another innocent bystander, there's absolutely nothing the Bristol Police Department can do about that. And we had a grave concern over that. So I know when you speak about, referendums to have a retail sales environment, what the law also doesn't do is say where you can and cannot specifically smoke it. Is it going to be down at the town beach? Is it going to be in the schoolyards? Is it going to be on town-owned property in our parks, Independence Park? So one of the things we'll be doing next week, or perhaps even Friday of this week, I have a draft of the letter. I gave the president the thumbs up that I supported the edits on it, is we're going to be asking the League of Cities and Towns, the mayors, the town administrators, and the managers to look at a uniform ordinance similar to what Lowell, Massachusetts said, saying that the marijuana is legal. However, you cannot smoke in school settings, our beaches, our parks, our town properties. We're hoping to have some uniformity, in that particular area. My concern on a retail establishment would be, again, someone acquires their marijuana legally. If they pull over on the side of the road and they are ingesting, marijuana, and then they get back onto the roadway, they actually made it legal for the passenger of the car to smoke. That's how wide open this legislation is. Our hands are tied. And I can tell you that we provided data that when other states enacted and legalized marijuana, the fatality rate of motor vehicle accidents drastically increased. And it had to do with impairment related to marijuana. So there is data and statistics out there that support that when marijuana is legalized, you can guarantee that there is a net effect. For every action, there is a reaction. The action in this case, in this state will be, there will be more roadway fatalities in the state of Rhode Island. We already have flagged as a state that is in critical danger for DUI involved fatality accidents. We do not have a good rating across our state for alcohol consumption and driving. And now we have added, marijuana. Those are my concerns as a member of the Rhode Island Police Chiefs Association. and, my public safety concerns if you were to move forward with a retail establishment. Impairment is my concern.
Ask you a question. Are you saying like basic field sobriety tests that exist now would not be able to be used?
Problem is that across the state, we have what they call DREs. That's an acronym for Drug Recognition Experts. However, the court has failed to allow their testimony in at the Superior Court level. So we addressed that on the floor. That was raised by Representative Noret, if I say his name correctly, that the courts are not recognizing the tools that we have to recognize impairment. And that was also silent in the legislation. In another tenet, I'm glad you brought that up, in our communications with the General Assembly. And as the sponsor of the legislation stated, they are certain that, with data, and I hope it's not due to deaths, they will make adjustments to this legislation.
But I mean, so going into it, so whenever the sale starts, there's like no way to, like, you can pull somebody over because they're driving erratically, but you can't, it's not going to hold up like if you to your arrest or whatever.
There are laws that would allow us to charge for impairment. I'm telling you that the court, if you look at case law rather than statutory law, so those are the decisions by the judges would be what a case law precedent might be. I can tell you that there's case law precedent in Rhode Island that we do not feel as though, and the Attorney General visited the Bristol Police Department and the hands went up in the basement of the police station. How do we address impairment? As the Vice President, I, eloquently asked the Attorney General to please provide us a position paper on what steps that we can use to bring a charge. We may not be victorious in court, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to just quit on the job. We're going to try to find alternative measures. I can tell you that the Attorney General did say it was going to be challenging the way the current law was written.
This is shocking. I mean, it really is shocking that it is like left like this. So is it your recommendation? Maybe that's not the right way to phrase it, that we don't put it to the voters, that we just opt out? Is that?
You can't.
We
Oh, you
can't,
can't. Oh, I
that's
thought
the
you could.
problem.
Oh, I
We
thought you
can't,
could just opt out.
the voters can opt out, but the council cannot make that decision.
Right, but I thought, oh, okay, because even when you asked about, when Aaron asked about the money,
Right.
that just meant like if the vote is that you opt out. Okay, I
Correct.
thought it meant like if we opted out and then
Yeah.
put it to the public
No.
vote. Okay.
The way the legislation's written, it's got to be the voters.
And on a side note, Mary, I did ask the solicitor, was there a time that he could recall or others to recall that you'd have to opt out of something? And Mike, what was your response to that? Never.
I couldn't
Yeah.
ever recall a statute of statewide significance such as this that puts the onus on the individual municipalities to opt out.
I think that one of the issues, what I was thinking about this, and I don't know, people with the tax rate and things, people will look at this as money and maybe help them to be able to stay in their homes and so forth. And I'm really happy that you guys are here. I'm hoping, I mean, there needs to be, there's going to be massive advocacy on the part to get it passed. And who's going to be the other voice to discourage people from voting yes? And I'm hoping that you guys will be that voice.
Can I just speak?
If you could state your name and address for the
Really
record.
wants to speak from your seat.
I know.
I really wanted
So
to
do
just sit there. So my name is Barbara Palumbo. I'm at 63 Narrows Road. I'm also the coordinator for the Bristol Prevention Coalition.
What is the
Um,
Bristol Coalition?
The Bristol Prevention
What does it do?
Coalition,
Yeah.
we are a committee through the town, and we work to educate and raise awareness for the use and misuse of substance, drug, alcohol. Like, we do focus mainly on our youth, but of course, education is, across the lifespan. We talked about opting in, opting out. Yes, we are very much in support of putting this on the referendum and getting it out to the public. We think it would be obviously a bad idea to just opt in. You can always opt in later if, we see what a wonderful thing this sale of cannabis is in our community. You can opt in later. one of the things we want to do, and we ask this council's permission, if you will, is we want to community-wide, we want to hold town hall meetings, we want to hold education, and we're not going to just say against. We want to look at both sides. We want to educate medically. We want to educate recreational. We are 100% feel for the chief and the police officers. There is no current way to measure impairment with marijuana, so that puts us already at a disadvantage. We've got issues with our youth with alcohol and tobacco. We have a hard time trying to wrangle that in. Now we're going to add cannabis. The list goes on and on. But one thing you guys mentioned, I just wanted to bring up is we talked about, or you talked about where these dispensaries could be, or where you could allow cannabis. And I believe somewhere in that 101 page document, it does say that it's not allowed within 1,000 feet of, and in Bristol, it's pretty significant. I believe it's 1,000 feet of underage sensitive areas, private public schools, daycares, Head Start programs, shelters, boys and girls clubs, places of worship, college campuses, etc. So I think that is something that we really need to hone in on, because if you really look at Bristol as a whole, that leaves you very limited space. The Prevention Coalition also few years back had a successful ordinance in the East Bay, all of our towns in the East Bay. And it is prohibiting the use of tobacco and vaping on any of our public grounds, any of our beaches, any of our parks. We want to follow suit with that. You don't allow public drinking. We don't want to allow public cannabis, medical or otherwise. So we want to be mindful to, where is it? Sorry. We want to be mindful, again, as to the areas where this is going to take place. So we want the opportunity to educate the community, and we ask for your indulgence in that. Of course, we want some help with the police department as well. So we are fully pushing to get this on the referendum so we can at least have a discussion.
Thank you. So there is no motion, so we need a motion.
Move that we put it on a referendum.
There was a motion?
Yes, there's a motion.
Gosh,
Okay.
I am so,
Okay,
I
sorry.
apologize.
Yeah.
We have a
I
motion
seconded
by
it,
Karen,
yeah, I
seconded
know.
by Mary.
That's
Is
it.
there any other
One
discussion?
day.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, Mr. Chairman, I can support this. I think ultimately, and I've talked to you about this already, is that I'll be looking forward to getting to work on those zoning ordinances so that when it's time for people to vote on the referendum, they can see where this will be and everything like that, so that they can make the most informed decision.
Agreed.
So,
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, Chief.
Mr. Chairman and members of the council, the next item on the agenda is I3, and this is Police Chief Lynch, and this is a request for the council resolution in support to amend the non-emergency police powers and authorize the mutual aid agreement.
Mr. Chairman, I am presently working with the Interlocal Trust to make some edits to that policy. So I would ask that you continue this to your next meeting.
We're okay with that time frame. So
Motion to continue.
Second.
motion made by Tim, seconded by Mary to continue to our June 22nd
22nd.
meeting. Any discussion?
Yes. C, all wages and disability payments, pension, that will be the responsibility of the employing agency. Is that something that you have to do anything with, Mike, or just it stays as is?
The way I understand that is your question was if if one of, it's the jurisdiction that's sending the officer would still be liable, right? So if we're using personnel from other communities on the 4th of July and they get hurt and permanently disabled, we don't have to pay those disability payments for the rest of their lives. It would be their employer, not the town of Bristol.
Right.
That's the intent.
Okay, but I'm not sure if that's clear in C though, because it says responsibility of the employee agency. Does that mean it's the current employer of that is still responsible, not the agency receiving the service?
It's supposed to be the employer where they get their paychecks from.
Okay, gotcha.
Could
So it
we
would
make
be-
sure that's
I'll address
emphatically
it.
clear?
Absolutely. That might be in the statute, Mr. Solicitor. That's spelled out statutorily.
I'll make sure it's clear.
Please.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman and members of the council, the next item on the agenda is I4, and this is the Department of Community Development. This is a request for the council consideration to draft an ordinance for a parking restriction on the portion of San Francisco Street.
Excellent. Ed Tanner, nice to see you. This is in front of the council. Refresh this council's memory, or Mr. Administrator, if you prefer.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, so recently San Francisco Street was the subject of a subdivision where 3 new house lots were created. And as part of that subdivision through the planning board, the street was extended within its existing right of way, but the pavement was actually extended. Proper drainage was installed. There's a what we can call a hammerhead turnaround for emergency vehicles and cars. So the street was greatly improved, and that location is one of the entrances to the Perry Farm, Tavares Farm open space property. And while the planning board was reviewing that project, the idea came up of creating just a small parking area as sort of a trailhead, so people visiting the Perry Farm property would have a place to park and they wouldn't be in the road. So the developer, John Lannon, when he paved the road, he created a little gravel parking area. It is on public land. It's in the town streets right of way, but it's a grassy gravel area. It will support about 4 or 5 cars. And that the intent was always to put some type of signage there so that people aren't parking there overnight. It's not meant to be a place for people to congregate or, to use. So we're asking that that the council adopt an ordinance that states it for no overnight parking.
So, Mr. Solicitor, the motion would be to refer to you to create an ordinance to that effect.
Absolutely.
So moved. Second.
Motion made by Tony, seconded by Tim. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Thank you. It's good to see you, Ed.
Thank you. Nice to
Mr. Chairman and members of the council, the next item on the agenda is I5. This is the Director of Community Development Williamson. This is an application for the zoning map change of Stephen Genario, managing member of the Genario Family Realty LLC for 374 and 380 Manicom Avenue. This is in an M manufacturing zone, request for a MMU, Medicom mixed use designation. This is a first reading and call for public hearing on July 13th.
Council?
So move to consider a first reading.
And
Second.
advertise.
End of the time.
Thank you.
Motion made by Tony, seconded by Tim, that this constitutes first reading and to advertise. May I just have a point of clarity for the council? MMU, Medicom mixed use, would include manufacturing. Is that correct?
No, Medicom mixed use is a relatively, I won't say relatively, I shouldn't call it a new zone, but it's been on the books for 7 or 8 years, maybe 2013-ish, maybe. And as its name pretends, if the council members might remember the Medicom Avenue Corridor Management Plan that we produced in
Oh, that old chestnut. You bet.
2007, 2008 era. So this zoning district came out of that. It's really intended to be a mixed use zone. It would allow various commercial uses, but also some residential. It allows some different building structures, and it has, there's a whole series of, there's a whole entire section of the zoning ordinance that allows different building heights and setbacks and public access, sidewalks and things like that, curb cuts. So it's an interesting zone. The only section of Bristol that's currently zoned MMU is Jackie's Galaxy and the land behind it.
council
Yep.
changed that zone a few
I
years
recall.
back. So this would be sort of the second one. It's that intersection of Franklin and Metacom, there sort of that node, if you will, was one of the areas that the comp plan has picked up since the corridor management plan. The comprehensive plan has picked up the creating sort of a mixed use area there where previously it was more manufacturing uses that we're not quite seeing on Metacom any longer.
Thank you.
Can I just ask you a quick question for that, though? I mean, I know, I think in a way you just answered it. You said you're not seeing those manufacturing along that, but I remember, for many years, over the years, because there's so little manufacturing zones in
Thank you.
Bristol,
Mhm.
that it's always sort of like, should we ever give that up?
Mhm.
Whatever the little bit we have left.
Certainly that's a good point. But well, the Metacom Avenue Corridor Management Plan spelled out an entire rationale for creating these little mixed-use zones and keeping the residential areas of Metacom as residential and, vice and whatnot. And then the comprehensive plan, the last two iterations of the comprehensive plan have picked up on that. So the council, the public has determined that this area would be appropriate for this type of a mixed-use zone. So this type of zone change would be consistent with that, I believe.
Is this mostly for, because they have somebody that wants to use the property, it says daycare center in here? I mean, as opposed to, like, nobody's gonna really want it, I would hope anyway, because otherwise we're gonna have a huge problem. To put housing, residential, anything like that, right along the landfill. I mean, right along our transfer station, which is right there. So,
Correct.
I mean, it looks like that some of this is to be able to accommodate the daycare that they have, if somebody that would like to do it. And it's a matter of right in this particular zone. Is that the main reason for asking for this to be this MMU, or are there other reasons? Are there other properties? I mean, it's just these two properties?
So my understanding from, I've had conversations with the property owners. They do have an interested party who wants to do a daycare in that zone. Currently in a manufacturing zone, that use is not permitted. So they can't do what the Sunshine Oil business recently moved to another manufacturing facility. So they're looking and thinking about what to do with this property, is from my conversations with them. And we said, well, the comp plan calls for it to become MMU. It's a more flexible zone. It allows a lot of various uses. So daycares, retail, service business, office uses, but it also does allow some residential. Certainly, any of that would have to fall. I know you're concerned about being near the landfill. I mean, the design standards and the type of uses that could go in there would have to be looked at, but nothing is proposed. My understanding is that the daycare facility would use the existing building. So the MMU design guidelines would only be triggered from a redevelopment project. If they came in and said, all right, we're going to tear down this building and build, we want to build a new mixed use, development here, that's what would trigger the ordinance and the planning board review.
I mean, I'd be curious to know if it would even be like a clean enough site for a kid, for little kids like that.
Mhm. We can have more dialogue about it. I'm also interested to hear more about precluding manufacturing, but certainly first reading. So
Yeah.
any other dialogue, discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the council, the next item on the agenda is I6. This is the Director of Community Development in regards to an application for zoning modification, zone map changes of Arthur Sullivan, Brady Sullivan Properties LLC for the Bristol Yarn Mill redevelopment for 125 Thames Street. This is a WPUD zone, which is a water planned unit development, waterfront urban rehab land development project, seeking modification to the conditional zoning changes for density of 98 units to 127 units, for minimum commercial space of 22,000 square feet to 6,300 square feet, for off-street parking dimensions of 10 feet wide to 9 feet wide, and for lane parking strips of double line markings to single line markings, and the request for ordinance revisions to Chapter 28 zoning comprehensive zoning code and map revisions, Section 28 281D2. This is first reading and call for public hearing on July 13th.
Nice job, man.
Thank you.
Yeah. Motion to call for, approve the first reading and call for a public hearing on July 13th, and to go up to advertise.
Second. Motion made by Tim, seconded by Tony. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Mr. Chairman and members of the council, the next item on the agenda is I7. This is DPW Director Perella. This is in regards to a transfer station restructuring to establish a yearly cap of 2 tons for all residential permit holders and to eliminate commercial permits and all commercial trash from being processed at the transfer station.
Mr. Administrator.
Thank you. Director Perella isn't with us tonight. His father passed away this evening, Frank Perella.
Sorry to hear about that.
Sorry for his loss.
But what he has provided you is a memo and some attached communications from Resource Recovery. Back in March, Resource Recovery started doing a review of all of the transfer stations in the state, including Bristol's, and they had identified an issue with how we combine commercial trash and residential. So at this point, we have to cease doing that as of July 1st. If we continue to do it, we'd have to segregate it, and essentially we'd be running a commercial trash hauling business. We'd be charged the commercial rate, which is $115 per ton to transport the commercial waste up to Johnston. And that fits outside of the statutory description of what a municipal transfer station is, which is to protect the health and welfare of the municipality. And it has, it's disconnected from any trash generated by your manufacturing or commercial enterprise. So the director studied this. He met several times with representatives from Resource Recovery, and the most sensible thing to do, unfortunately, would be to cap trash acceptance to 2 tons a year for residents. So a resident, any resident in the town of Bristol that has property here could get a residential dump permit, including maybe a small business owner, but you would be capped up to 2 tons per year. And we're hoping that this now will keep us under the cap and we'll save some money, and hopefully that'll be reflected in the annual survey of what we're actually delivering up there, actual trash versus recyclables. Right now, our trash rates are much higher than our recycle rates because we take in a great deal of commercial. So essentially what we're doing is, like almost just about every other community, there may be a couple still out there that accept commercial trash. They're really running the basic service, which is trash pickup for our homes, and that's why we have the lower rate. We're at $54 a ton. That's the rate that they provide us.
Tremendous difference.
Yeah, so we would go up to, if we don't comply with this by July 1st, we'd be up to $115 a ton.
Oh
So the
my
good
God.
news is nothing
Wow.
changes for our residents. If you have a dump permit, you can still get a dump permit. But you would be capped at 2 tons a year, which is a pretty good amount of trash.
When you and I spoke about this a few days ago, I recall asking the question that how many residents would actually even or currently even get close to the 2 ton, and my recollection is
sorry.
very, very little.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, Director Perella has that information. Unfortunately, he's not with us, but we held out as long as we could with the commercial trash, but the time has come where we just can't justify. Right now, we have some days we have 2 of those hauling trucks going up to Johnston every day with 2 DPW workers, just to keep up with the volume that we bring in, construction debris and so forth. So it's time for us to tighten up the belt here. Unfortunately, we don't have a choice. We have to, they've kind of forced us at this point.
and this is no longer an ordinance change. This is a fee schedule change, correct? Am I right with that?
Yes.
Okay. Council?
It's a regulation, so it's not, yeah, but it still needs council action.
Yeah.
Your motion would be to approve the recommendation.
So I think personally, I think we need to be in compliance. And I'll make a motion to approve the recommendation from the DPW director. And, I think it's the right thing to do.
Second.
Motion made by Tim, seconded by Tony to approve the recommendation. Discussion?
One other point is nothing will change as far as curbside pickup. I know we have some downtown routes. Nothing's changing. The trucks will still go out on the normal routes, still pick up trash. The only difference here is if you have a commercial permit as of July 1st, you'll no longer be able to use it in Bristol. You can get a residential permit and you'll be capped at two tons per year. But as far as the automated, all the carts that we went through and issued, we'll still pick those up.
I could ask you one quick question. I mean, I'm in a total agreement with this. It's just, how will you be notifying those businesses? Because they'll have to make other
Yeah,
agreements because it's a
there'll
month.
be, yeah, that's why we wanted this, again, you can see the communications, they started in March and the last one was in May 5th.
Mhm.
We're going to send letters out. We have a list of who the permit holders are, so we'll send DPW will be sending a notice out. Due to the changes required by Rhode Island Resource Recovery, the town can no longer afford with the $115 per ton commercial rates.
Thank you.
Thanks
So
for the
glad-
update. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so glad to see that happening because I wish I could implement that in a little community. We just don't have a skill to do it. But I'm in full agreement. Yeah.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
I was not,
Aye.
I did not
Okay,
have
let's
that.
raise your
behind it.
hand.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Stay with.
Yeah, it's getting late. I understand. Let's keep moving.
Mr. Chairman and members of the council, the next item on the agenda is I-8. This is Susan Martini, 46 Highland Road. This is a request for support of the proclamation declaring the first Friday in June to be National Gun Violence Awareness Day.
Council?
Motion to support the proclamation.
Second.
Motion made by Tim, seconded by Tony to support. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to point out that this is something that Susan brings to us every year, and obviously we have some heavy hearts. Well, with everything that's gone on in Texas.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, the next item on the agenda is request for the executive session. We'll move
Take
to
it
the
up at the
end.
end. You bet.
The next item on the agenda is J1. This is RFP 982. This is the Information Technology and Consulting Services. The bids were open today at noon. We received 5 bids for bid 982. The first bid was from Freedom Tech, Inc. in the amount of $103,816.32. This is an annual total estimated cost. The second one was from Micro Technology Solutions, Inc. And this was in the amount of $76,070. This is an ongoing management service, but this was based on an estimate of hours. The third one was from Hub Technical Services LLC. This was in the amount of $227,760. This is a total reoccurring payment and a one-time $3,000 onboard cost. The next one is from Vertical 6, Inc. You'll know on your form, it says $22,207.50. That's what was read at the bid, but they did not clearly mark that that was just a monthly fee. After further clarification with Chris, that was the 1 monthly fee. So the yearly cost would be $185,062.50 for the first year. The next one was from Uplink IT, Inc. And that was in the amount of $163,976.76.
Council?
Chris, I just had a question on the consultant service. I know we have Freedom Tech. So this would be for this for the new buildings?
No, so if you recall, we first went out to bid for IT services back in 2019. And
Okay.
it was a 3-year contract, so it's already been 3 years.
Okay.
And so it was time to put this back out to bid. Obviously, we reviewed the scope of work again to make sure that it was inclusive of everything we needed to with all the operations we have going on. So we put that out at the beginning of last month, and that's what you have before you here today.
Thanks for the recap. Yeah. Okay. 3 years. Wow. Motion to refer to the town administrator and the economic development coordinator to act in the best interest of the town.
Second.
Motion made by Tim, seconded by Tony to refer. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Mr. Chairman and members of the council, the next item on the agenda is J2. This is RFP 983. This is the odor control system media replacement. The bid was held today at 12 noon. We received one bid from Equality Construction Works, Inc. in the amount of $383,700.
Ouch. Oh.
This is council's pleasure. There's a joke there. Don't make the joke.
No.
That bid stinks.
You went there. You went there.
What's this council's pleasure?
Refer to the town administrator to act in the best interest of the town.
Second.
Motion made by Tony, seconded by Tim to refer to the administrator. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman and members of the council, the next item on the agenda is bid 985, the 4th of July Committee Celebration Fireworks Display, which was also open today at noon, and there was one bid received from Atlas Pyro Vision Entertainment Group, Inc. in the amount of $21,000.
Well, that's a fun one.
Yes,
Ah,
lots of
Counsel?
fireworks. Move to the, pass it to the town administrator to act in the best interest of the town.
Second.
Motion made by Tony, seconded by Tim to refer to the administrators or any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman and members of the council, the next item on the agenda is bid 986. This is the 4th of July Committee Portable Toilets. We received one bid today at noon from Holman Septic Services and Portable Toilets LLC in the amount of $16,190 for 2022 with the option for renewal in 2023 in the same amount.
I'm getting a look that I was going to make a joke and I'm not.
Why you
Does this-
stinky
does this
kid?
qualify
That's
as
okay.
another,
Yeah, go ahead.
does qualify as another stinky one?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Make a motion to refer the town administrator to act in the best interest of the town. Sorry, Steve.
Second.
Motion made by Tim, seconded by Tony to refer. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Mr. Solicitor.
The motion would be to convene into executive session pursuant to 42-46-5A5 regarding the acquisition or lease of real property.
Council?
Motion to adjourn.
Nope.
Oh, sorry.
So
Yeah.
moved.
Mike, you can't vote. I don't know if you're familiar with.
My Freudian slip there.
Just supposed to say so moved.
So moved.
That's it.
Motion made by Tim, seconded by Mary. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. So we're going into executive session and we will come back out in the normal meeting, but the cameras will be off after that. So good night, everyone.
Good night.